Hello. Okay, so Jason here has kindly agreed to answer some industry professional questions for me. So Jason, if you want to just introduce yourself and let the guys here know what you're about and who you are and your background and everything. Um, okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, sure thing. Cheers for considering me and asking me to do it. Quite like doing things like this. So, as you already know, my name's Jason. I've been in the industry since last November. I've worked at two studios in that time, End Dreams and Climax. I've been doing 3D for about a year and a half. Prior to that, I have about 10 years creative experience working as a tattoo artist, and yeah, I've moved all around the world, seemingly to get to where I am now.
So, like I said at the start, I got a few questions for Jason just to kind of gauge what to expect when going into the industry. So as Jason's done a interview and recruitment process recently, was it Climax you joined recently? Was that the recent?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Climax is the recent one.
yeah. Okay. So if I go straight in, we go question one. So if I say, what did the recruitment process look like from start to finish? So essentially, I want to gain a fuller understanding of what to expect if I get an opportunity to interview.
Absolute hell. No, I'm kidding. It, you know, the recruitment process is a really strange thing because I think everyone who, especially when it's your dream job or a job that you really want, you'll build up the process and you'll build up the interview in your head as to how it could go. And I think everyone's got this scenario painted in their mind of being sat across the table and three people just stood there with like stern faces, just kind of judging you and your portfolio. And it's not like that. Um, so the recruitment process, traditionally, as I've experienced it, is usually once you do get the invite for the first interview. First interview is usually with the recruiter. They'll see if you're like good enough on paper, and they'll like pass you on to the next one, which is usually the lead of your team or someone like that. And they'll then like judge your portfolio and ask you to talk through your portfolio. And it's a good thing to kind of practice
Yeah.
these things. I mean, you can look up top 10 interview questions, and they are the exact questions that get asked.
Yeah.
So the first one being, oh, tell us a little bit about yourself. And like most people will get stuck there because they've not actually practiced. So
Would
I've not
that
had to
be?
do any art tests or anything.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
When they say
yeah.
tell us about yourself, would that generally be what your interests are, or would they want to know like about your professional background, like where your skills lie, or do they just want to know more about you as like a human?
Well, I mean, if you're a junior, then you're not going to have any professional background
Yeah.
whatsoever. So, and if if you kind of like wrote a list and you were like, oh, I'm courageous, I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other, it's a little bit boring. Generally, they want to know about you as a person because at the end of the day, you're working with a team. You could be like the best artist in the world, but if you're a bit of a dick and nobody wants to work with you, then you're going to be useless in the
Yeah.
team.
Yeah.
So generally, the tell them like where you're from, what some of your interests are, why you got into video games. I always like to tell a story in an interview. So, like for myself, it's realizing how much I wanted to be in video
Yeah.
games, and in my 20s, like asking teachers and stuff, and them just pointing me in the absolutely wrong direction because they didn't want to admit that they didn't know either,
Yeah.
and then only finding out how the games industry actually works and that 3D isn't just all programming and technical stuff, and there is a lot of creativity into it. And so immediately, as soon as you start telling a story, you interview, it's less about questions and more like you're talking to them as people.
Yeah.
So you start off with your recruiter, they'll interview you. If you pass that, you then get interviewed by either a team member or the lead team member. And then the third one is usually some form of like art director or higher up, um, that then interviews you, and you then get if you're lucky enough, you'll get the email saying that they'd like to make you an offer.
Yeah. What aspects of your portfolio made you stand out? What aspects were strong enough to land you an interview?
So portfolio wise, that's like a really interesting thing.
Yeah.
So one of the first things that recruiters and stuff immediately see, and they look for this all the time. How up to date is your portfolio? They will look at your most recent post, and then they will look at your last post.
Yeah.
So for me, as soon as they do that and they see that I've only been doing it for about a year and a half, um, they're a bit kind of blown away by it.
Yeah.
So that stands in good stead. So I think this is why I do preach that people need to have an active portfolio.
Yeah.
And standing out, I mean, standing out is just having, you need to have the right tools for the right job. Like, but my portfolio is mainly kind of realistic with like a bit of caricatureness to the characters. There's a bit of an exaggerated like facial expression, but enough to kind of get away with it. And yeah, so like that would get me hired with companies that are working on those types of projects.
Yeah.
Would that get me hired if a company was doing, I don't know, Little Big Planet? Probably not. They might hire me for something else, but I'm not going to get put on a stylized project. Or for example, Blizzard Games isn't going to hire me with that portfolio because they want like simple hand painted stuff. So knowing your target market and knowing what you want to work on, which is more about kind of knowing yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
Because even though like let's say Blizzard is your target and you start making this like portfolio catered towards Blizzard, but then you find yourself absolutely hating the art that you're doing. It's okay to be able to appreciate the art that Blizzard does and then do your own art and like do what you love and love what you do kind of stuff, and then it'll just come through in your portfolio. And recruiters, again, a bit like when you're talking to the recruiters and stuff, like just having a genuine portfolio and keeping it up to date is maybe the most important things.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. You touched on it earlier, around about question one, with what questions they asked you within the interview. Was there any other kind of questions that stood out to you in your interview processes that they asked you?
Oh man, yeah, few actually. So the first one was always tell us a little bit about yourself, and then would move on to talking about your portfolio. So again, same with the tell us about yourself. Before you do the interview, look at each piece that you've done and write down and go back through in your head why you did it,
Yeah.
the problems that you encountered doing it, how you solved those problems, and then what you learned from it.
Okay.
Because they might pick a specific piece for you to talk about, but to be honest, in my experience, they just kind of let you go, and it's like, all right, you pick what you want to talk about, and then at the end, if they have any questions, they'll ask you to like touch on one of them. Other than that, like
Just kind of like a free form kind of conversation, is it?
kind of, it's quite free formal. They have been. You can get asked, especially if it's almost like for artist security to protect their own artists that they have. So they might ask you questions like, "Oh, what type of person really grinds your gears?" And they'll just try and like see if you're a fit
Yeah.
for a team, basically.
Did they try and use
So
that as
again,
a bit of a trick question, maybe, to see how you'd kind of approach answering that question?
I mean, I wouldn't say they're trick questions. They're very open questions. I mean, like, my favorite question has always been why should we hire you?
Okay.
And I love that question because you can give such a strong answer to that, especially if they can see that you're putting in the work in your portfolio. And my like go-to answer is, well, I'm going to be making characters with or without your studio. So you can either benefit from it or someone else will.
Yeah, it's a powerful answer.
And it's just taking some like time to prepare yourself for an interview, dude.
Yeah,
Um, I think most people like if you go into an interview unprepared, then it's really going to go tits
yeah.
up.
Okay, so strong emphasis on kind of preparation there. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
If we go on to the next one, how much emphasis would you put on optimization as a junior? Are you generally worrying about polygon counts and effective UVs?
Um, Fuck no, would be my my absolute answer.
Yeah,
So for personal work, dude, you just want to make it look good.
yeah, yeah,
Because at the end of the day, the first person that's going to see that is the recruiter. Recruiters have like little to no technical knowledge of what goes on behind games.
yeah,
They just recruit. They see a great portfolio and they recruit you and put you through the box on that portfolio.
yeah,
And the next person that will see a great portfolio will be the art team that they pass your stuff onto. And there's so many seniors in the industry. I think you should have one good example showing that you can do that.
okay,
And then if you feel like you're weak in those areas, then any projects that you do, then you should go through and practice that.
okay,
So like, but I wouldn't like, I mean, you could, for example, like a pair of trainers, if you're doing a 3D pair of trainers, you can make that model watertight and really like crunch it down
yeah,
and bake the laces into just one solid mesh of the shoe, and that will you'll get a decent result. But you've also just sacrificed all this cool quality that you could have had with just keeping it as geo.
yeah. Okay, interesting. So it's
So
kind of like
like for
balancing
for
it.
personal, yeah, for personal stuff, like I wouldn't even bother. Um, Also, as well, it depends on what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah,
Like if you are making an asset, like a really ornate asset, and you want to go through the process of retopology and stuff because you enjoy it. Like personally, I quite enjoy doing retopology and I like doing the UV, and so I like seeing it as like a big puzzle, and I'll go through and what kind of shapes can I make with the topology. But ultimately, like it's going to be well over the poly count of probably a normal asset.
okay. Cool. Yeah, so I guess it's like you want to be able to show that you can do game ready stuff, but in the interim you want to make your work look as good as possible so that untrained eyes will get you through the door to show off your optimized workflow.
Basically, and
Yeah,
to be honest, dude, once you're in the industry, you're going to be doing so much of the same thing
yeah,
and you'll be learning so much. So a lot of the technical stuff can be taught really fast. Like you could probably teach somebody in a week how to properly retopologize and UV stuff. They might not understand why they're doing what they're doing, but they'll have it down. And that's just a technical thing.
yeah,
However, the artistic side is the bit that takes a long time to train up, which is why just having a bang portfolio
yeah,
will stand out far more than technical stuff because like artists can train technical stuff,
yeah.
but having an artistic eye and practicing those kind of fundamentals will get you like a lot further.
Cool. Interesting. Okay. So I'm going to go on to question five. I think you've answered this one slightly, but we'll cover it anyway. So when you had your interviews, what kind of preparation did you do ahead of your interviews? And looking back, is there anything you would do differently now?
Um, so I get kind of autistic when it comes to preparing for things.
Okay.
uh, I maybe like overly prepare. I'm very much a believer of uh, there's only two types of people, like trained and untrained.
Yeah.
And if you don't, how's the saying go?
Isn't it prepare
If
to
if you
fail?
fail,
Fail to prepare, prepare
yeah,
to fail. Is it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If you fail to prepare, you prepare to
Yeah,
fail.
that's the one.
So what I would do every morning leading up to, well, every morning and evening, I would take the top interview questions, and then I would film myself talking to my phone camera,
Hmm.
because obviously a lot of the time they're doing remote now, so you see yourself on the screen, or you seeing other people on the screen, and I would then play that back. I'd play that back in a few ways. One, looking at the video without sound
Yeah.
to just see my body language,
Okay.
and then I would play it back with the video facing away from me, so I could just hear it
Yeah. Okay.
to then get a glimpse of like tonality and stuff like that. And as soon as you've done this for a couple of days, like before we started the interview, as soon as I heard my own voice, I was like, "Good God!" Um, like,
I think everybody does it though, don't they? Everybody just thinks their
and
voice sound different in digital format.
yeah, yeah. But after a few days of doing that, you develop a tonality, and it's quite strange. You do develop a tonality and maybe like a rhythm of speaking, and yeah. So I definitely just like find the questions, talk about yourself and talk about your portfolio, rewatch those, find like the story that you can kind of speak about and stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, the more you kind of do that, the more prepared you're going to be
Hmm.
for the interview, and then the less stressed you're going to be, which will come across in the interview. Like if you've done this 1,000 times, you're going to be very relaxed going into an interview.
Okay. So I'm going to go on to the next one now. I think question 6 we answered pretty well. That was about it being, visually strong or, getting
Yeah.
ready assets. So if I go on to number 7, are there any techniques that you've learned specifically once you started the role? For example, hair card work or meta-human work?
Well, it's one of those things you learn constantly,
Yeah.
uh, and I'm constantly looking for new ways to do the same thing and kind of up the proficiency.
Okay.
So, for example, I can give you an example of the current project that won't like break NDA,
Yeah, sure.
but the PBR workflow isn't a metallic roughness workflow,
Okay.
which is what I'm used to using. So instead of a base color metalness and roughness, it's a diffuse specular and glossiness,
Right. Okay.
which I had never come across. So constantly learning, man.
And is that now posing challenges or?
I mean, it's interesting because you're creating the textures. Like whereas with metal, you just turn the metalness up and then you add a bit of color and there you go, you've got copper. So for this, you actually you're only adding a tiny bit of color, and then you're actually controlling how much the light's reflecting back off of that object, as well as how shiny the object is. So there's I'm almost seeing it as it's considered a legacy way of working. So it's how people used to do things before metalness and roughness. So it's got a lot more control, but it is far more
Yeah.
technical.
Um, okay, if I go on to the next one, you might have kind of answered this one slightly already as well during the course of this talk. If I go with what were the more challenging aspects of the workflow pipeline when you first started as a junior? I can give
Fucking
this one.
onboarding, dude.
Onboarding, yeah.
Onboarding. Like honestly, the bit that nothing like you can have such a good portfolio and you can know the workflow like really down.
Yeah.
What will not prepare you or what you won't be prepared for is your first couple of days of onboarding
Yeah.
where you're hit with 10 different passwords that you need to change. You've already got an email address set up. You go into that and you've got 30 odd emails, all of which you have to go through, sign your NDAs, send those off.
Okay.
If you've done relocation stuff, then you need to go through the relocation thing and like find where to put that through. There's like companies are using so many different programs to just function.
Yeah.
So like you might be using Teams to speak or Slack or Google Meets. So you'll be looking at your calendar for that kind of stuff. And then there might be Miro or something for like all your art directory boards. So making sure you know where all of that stuff is. And then other yeah, there's so many other programs that by the time you've downloaded all of those, you just want to get into Blender or
Yeah.
Maya and somewhere safe. Um,
Yes, it's
so
ironic that a safe place to be is in Maya retopologizing a character. That's the safe place.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like the first three to like 3 days to a week, I'd say. Um, your brain's just constantly mush from the amount of stuff that you're taking in.
Yeah. Would you say that's because you're? I mean, this would have been your first office role, if I'm not mistaken, because you came from a tattoo background. So would you say that that's because it was more challenging because you'd never done that kind of office environment before?
Oh, absolutely. That's definitely got something to play into it.
Yeah.
So I had no idea. I didn't even know that onboarding was a thing,
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was. So I, but this is even the second time of doing it. And recently we've just had a junior join us and he's worked at, I think, two prior studios. And like his brain's been absolutely melted over the
Yeah.
past 3 days. So I don't think you get used to it. There's just such an influx of information, and because you've just started, you think all that information is really important when in reality, it yeah, it's just need to remember kind of clock in, clock out.
Yeah, for sure. So number nine, what advice would you give to someone trying to start their role in the gaming industry?
Focus more on your portfolio and less on like applying for jobs.
Okay.
So let me try and phrase that in a good way.
Is that like saying that if you do good work, then the offers will come essentially, or
Yeah, yeah. So it's a bit like art and social media now. Like a lot of people focus more on social media than they do their art, and then they wonder why they're not getting any better.
yeah,
I'd almost not apply for any jobs until you can maybe reach out to another junior that's been hired for the similar position, and you could put your portfolio and theirs side by side, and the quality amongst it looks consistent.
okay,
Like applying for jobs should just be kind of like second. Like if you see it, just to kind of apply just to see what would happen. But until you get that kind of quality up there, or you've got enough in your portfolio, definitely just focus on the work.
okay. Yeah, thank you. That was a really interesting point. This is my last question for now. So before you started a lot of this process, did you have much rejection before you got your current role? How long did it take before you were hired?
Well, um, I mean, how far back do we want to go? Because I was applying for concept art jobs like 4 years ago, and I never got even uh, a whiff of an interview back then.
Well, let's not depress it too
Um,
much.
so put it this way: like when people say, "Oh, I've applied to 100 jobs and no, I've not heard back or not got a single one," 100 jobs seems like a very small thing
Yeah,
compared to the amount of times and rejections. I went through from A to Z in the game UK game dev map
okay,
and basically sent emails out to over 200 studios, indie from ranging from indie to AAA.
yeah,
I didn't get a single hit back from that.
okay,
Uh, I think applying, you just need to be fast.
yeah,
Like Dreams, I know that their application process, they only open the process for the first 2 days
right, okay,
and then they close it. So after that, if you've not applied, like you, somebody else in those 2 days will probably get the job
yeah,
unless they don't, in which case they'll open it back up. But just being fast, like you need to be checking LinkedIn
yeah.
morning, noon, and night, and have those notifications on and have that turned on.
Okay. Okay, interesting. Well, yeah, that's all been invaluable information. Thank you so much for that, Jason.